Welcome to the Shyamcast. This is Brett.
This is Shyam.
Thanks so much for being with us here today. How are you doing today, Shyam?
Busy day, but very nice.
Busy day. Yeah, how are things at the new temple?
Yeah, that's where we are busy at. Some
Yeah,
renovations for the kitchen and other things. Planning a
yeah.
move on Monday. Monday is very auspicious day. It's Lord Balaram's appearance day.
Mm,
So it's also a Purnima. Purnima is like full moon day. So in Vedic astrology, full moon days are considered the most auspicious days of the month. And what to say, full moon day, and it's the full moon is the appearance of Lord Balaram. So it's like extra topping on it.
And Balaram is Lord Krishna's brother.
His brother, yes.
So yeah, very significant.
Mm. And he is the in charge of spiritual strength. Because we need strength to deal with the ups and downs of this existence, temporary existence.
Mm,
That strength comes from Balaram. Bala actually means strength.
mm,
And we also need spiritual strength to overcome the illusory energy. So it's not easy. So his appearance day and a full moon day. So we are planning to move to the new center, um, and preparation for that is going on.
yeah, very nice. No, I was there the other day, and such our Charles Prabhu was working very hard. He was sort of like tearing up the floor of the kitchen.
Uh,
He
uh,
was, these loud sounds. He was like chiseling away basically at the old kitchen floor and getting it down to the concrete again.
yeah.
So
And
yeah,
that's Monday, I guess, yoga day.
that was Monday. Yeah.
How did it go in the center?
It's very nice. Yeah, it's a nice big space there in the basement.
Uh,
Yeah, you can have a really nice class there. Yeah.
uh,
And they also have like they have that stage set up right in the middle of the
yes,
room there.
yes.
I feel like that would be a great place either to just like do kirtans on there, have like the
Uh,
kirtan team, on the stage, or maybe like when we do dramas,
uh,
it's
uh.
like a very nice space for that.
And even yoga instructor can stand there
Hmm.
to show
Absolutely.
poses. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's just sort of that's not even the main space of the temple,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
just sort of like the basement room. So,
yeah, yeah. That's like food hall,
yeah.
but that works well for us still.
Yeah. Very exciting time for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Also, we just heard the news that Kalakanta Prabhu is coming September and October first week.
Oh, wonderful.
So, further details, he said he will let us know few days.
Very good. Mm.
All right. So, what's the topic for today?
Okay. So, there's a we're going to be looking at the one verse that I would like to read today is verse
Please.
33 in chapter 3.
Okay.
Um, and actually maybe I'll just read it because I think the topic is in the verse itself.
Mm,
So,
okay.
what we've talked about so far in chapter 3, Krishna is telling Arjuna that he needs to perform his duty,
Mm,
based off of his role in society, based off of his nature.
mm,
And he talks about how, doing one's duty is actually the thing that frees you. It's like we've mentioned, re regulating the senses
mm,
helps to free us from all those attachments that we have. And he
mm,
says, similarly, performing your duty helps to free you from, the bondage of
mm,
all these things that we're also tightly attached to.
mm, mm,
Um, and then he goes on to say, as we talked about last time, uh, it's like once somebody you sort of get free of these attachments,
mm,
you don't really have a duty anymore. in a
mm,
sense, you know.
mm,
Um, the self-realized person is not really bound to do anything,
mm,
but they still perform action sort of as if they're just kind of living a regular life, you know,
mm,
as a way of sort of setting the example for other people. You
mm,
know, we talked about, you know, whatever a great person does, everybody else follows that
mm,
person. You know,
mm,
that's um it's something we see playing out in life
mm,
everywhere, right?
mm,
And so now he's going on to say, you know, okay, so you got to perform your duty. Um, your duty, I guess, how you know what your duty is, right? It just is according to your nature.
mm,
Um, and so this verse, verse 33, uh, reads as follows then.
mm,
So Krishna says, even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. For everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes.
mm,
What can repression accomplish? And so I guess, you know, our topic for today then, or one place anyway that I like to focus is that last part, that question that he asks, what can repression accomplish?
mm, mm,
Um, yeah, and I guess you know, just initially, I mean, I'd say I feel like this is a very nice verse to me, because it just points to how whatever whatever our nature is,
mm,
whatever we like to do, however we, whatever sort of, you know, some people are quiet, for example, some people are
mm,
loud,
mm,
some people like to be in the center of attention, some people like to be on the outside,
mm,
some people like to lead, some people like to follow.
mm,
Um, whatever that nature is,
mm,
Krishna's just saying, do that, you know,
mm,
just do that thing. Be
mm,
the way that you feel like being, that
mm,
you naturally are.
mm,
And and then he asks, you know, it's I guess it's kind of like a hype or not a hypothetical, but um I'm forgetting the word. Like when it's a question that's not really meant to be answered exactly, you know, just like, well, what can repression accomplish? Um, but I want to know, you know, what your thoughts are on this verse, Prabhuji, and on that question. What can repression accomplish?
mm. An inherent answer is it's going to be not a fruitful experiment. And Krishna more clearly defines in 18th chapter. He says, follow your nature. And he also says here later on, it's better to do one's duty imperfectly than to do somebody else's perfectly.
Mm,
Um, and then he also says in the beginning of this chapter, everyone is forced to act according to one's nature.
hmm
Is forced to act according to one's nature. And trying to be somebody else is artificial because that's not our modes. And we cannot stay there for long.
mm. Yeah, you can only pretend to
Mm,
be someone you're not
mm,
for so long, right?
mm,
Before who you are comes out.
mm. And people also know our personality. And people knows everyone's personality also. And when we change roles, people also feel uncomfortable. Why is he acting like this? But they're surprised actually. But they know that's not us. So even our friends cannot take us in a different role also.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like I can this verse kind of like it has some meaning to me personally
Mm,
because I do kind of have this tendency or have had this tendency in the past anyway to sort of repress things.
mm,
Um, I kind of have an ability to be like a little bit of a chameleon when it cut like in social circumstances. I can kind of just like adjust how I'm acting to sort of
mm,
fit with, you know, whatever the group is that I'm in, whatever the
mm,
situation is. Um, and you know, I guess for people out there who also have like a sort of people pleasing tendency
mm,
where your mind is sort of like I always just sort of want everyone else to be happy with me,
mm, mm,
or I want them to like me. And so I'm going to adjust my behavior or adjust the way that I talk to fit with what I think somebody else wants, right?
Mm,
Um, and all of those things, in one way or another, it's a repression of whatever it is that's the natural way of being or the
mm,
natural way of acting.
mm,
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, when I look back on it, it's like, well, what does repression accomplish?
mm,
Um, I mean, as you say, it's not like you can run the experiment. I guess maybe, I've definitely run the experiment at different
mm,
points,
mm,
in life. Um, and eventually, like if you start taking a path that's not your true path,
mm,
it's not in accordance with your own nature, you're going to have to like you veer off of that, right?
mm,
Because you like Krishna says, you're helpless to the modes of nature that
mm,
that are working on you. So like you have to go back
mm.
to your path. Um, yeah.
So one thing I was thinking, a very nice point you brought up, Prabhu, is um, we have to act according to our nature. We cannot repress. But then our nature may exhibit in a positive way, in a negative way. So when our nature exhibit in a negative way, we want to repress that. At the same time, we cannot repress our nature. So we want to exhibit our nature in a way that is favorable for our progress. So nature is not good or bad, and the same nature can exhibit in n number of ways. I can exhibit that nature. For example, Duryodhan has a nature of Kshatriya or a fighter.
Mhm.
Arjuna has a nature of fighter. One is exhibiting the nature in a negative way. One is exhibiting the nature in a positive way. So we cannot be not a fighter.
Mm.
So we also have our nature. Somewhere we may exhibit, for example, in mode of ignorance. Then I may do some things like nightclubs or something, which is again an exhibition of ignorance. But then I can use my ignorance by serving somebody who is, say, a spiritual minded person. And so my ignorance can help me grow, or my ignorance can take me down. My nature is there. Likewise, mode of passion is like, there are many symptoms of mode of passion. So I can exhibit in a way which is not conducive. I can exhibit in a way which is very conducive. Example of exhibit in a very conducive way is um, uh, creation is passion.
Mhm.
So, like we are trying, say, we start some, um, we are driven to start some, say, outreach activity. So creation is still passion, actually. Or like, this renovation is also passion.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that.
Uh,
Yeah. It's a
so
big,
there are a lot of
yeah.
passionate activities that can be used positively. Then our same nature, that's what Krishna is saying, cannot be not act on our nature. Repression is not possible, but it can manifest in a wide varieties of ways.
Mm.
And what is karma yoga is exhibiting our nature in the service of the devotee or saintly people.
Mm.
So some people say that, for monks, oh, you left karma yoga. We discussed earlier. No, we didn't leave karma yoga. And that's why we are exhibiting our nature in the service of the divine. But that activity is there. So transcendental personalities are free. They like Srila Prabhupada. He may also do things like renovations, building temples, or different different outreach program. But he's doing it purely for, like, he's free. But he's doing it purely out of compassion, service to the Lord, service to spiritual master, following instruction. He's free, but he's setting a good example and he wants to help the society.
Mm.
But those who are bound, like some of us, then they may do the similar activity, but then it's positively engaging our nature, and that becomes karma yoga. So yoga means when our nature is used to connect us to the divine. So many people think, who are, say, doing something in life for a personal benefit, and they say this is karma yoga. No, no, sir, this is not karma yoga. This is what you are perceiving as karma yoga. Yoga means when the nature is used to serve the divine.
Mm. So, let's say, for example, someone who is kind of in their nature, they're sort of a business-minded person.
Mm,
They have a lot of drive,
mm,
they like to start projects, they like to start things. So, you know, um, and that person is involved, in a temple or something. So they want to start a new temple,
mm,
like it would
mm.
be a
Yeah,
positive way of utilizing their nature for them to start a temple, right? So that
yeah,
they can, or
yeah.
they do fundraising. They love to raise money, but instead of raising the money so that they can go buy a second house and, whatever, go on vacation, they raise money for the temple. So yeah, I guess that's maybe just an example anyway. It's like using that nature, whatever it is, um, in a spiritual direction.
Exactly, bro. That's karma yoga.
Mm, it's karma yoga. And so somebody like Srila Prabhupada, as you mentioned, who when he starts a temple, right, it has nothing to do with that his nature is that he likes to create and all these things, right? It's purely um an act of service that's based off of the relationship that he has with the divine, right? It's like
Mm,
I know that this is basically I know this is what Krishna wants. He wants to
mm,
have temples, wants people to
mm,
come and do
mm,
kirtan and, be
mm,
devotees together. And so that's, it's like that's the reason for doing it. That's like
mm,
all of the intention behind it.
mm.
Mm,
So certain nature which is when it is exhibiting in a non-positive way, then repression is good.
mm.
And
So,
then that, mm,
or sorry, Prabhuji, go ahead.
yeah, and when we repress, then again the nature is there, then we have to force our nature to engage in a positive direction. So
Mm,
just repressing and not repressing our entire nature is not sustainable. So we withdraw our energy in certain direction and we engage the same energy in certain direction. And that makes us stable. But if we just withdraw and not using our nature in a positive direction, then we become unstable. We cannot survive like that. We can survive a few months, a few years, and then we leave.
mm. So like, I mean, like Krishna keeps saying to Arjuna, like you have to do something, right?
Mm,
Like you have this nature, you have these inclinations, you have to act on them,
mm,
but it's really a matter of choosing the correct way of going about that, right? The
mm,
correct way of acting on them.
mm,
So when you say like, okay, in repression is, or like when you say repression is a good thing in terms of like the negative aspects of those
mm,
inclinations,
mm,
I mean, could we apply this like that example of, okay, there's a business-minded person, you
mm,
know, they're starting a temple. Um, it's like, okay, the negative aspect of that might be like maybe like a bit of selfishness or some greediness, you know. Um,
mm.
and so I'm just trying to understand, I guess,
Yeah, thank you,
how to
Prabhu.
think of this.
Well, I am thinking more from the principle of committing sins. So somebody is, he has a nature to do the business, he does the business, no problem. And then he uses some of the results in service of the Lord and some for one's maintenance, still favorable. And he practices devotional service in his morning times as a personal life, no problem, perfect. Some may use the entire nature to serve the Lord. Some may use partially their nature to serve the Lord and partially to maintain themselves. Fine, perfect, no problem. But some, there are, one can commit sins according to one's nature also. Like we have, um, like um, intoxications. It's a sin in mode of ignorance. Then unwanted relationship, sin in mode of passion. So there are certain sins that can occur based on one's nature. So there we want to repress. So there are some things which are anti. progress. There are some which can be directed towards progress. There are some which are completely for the Lord. These two are good. This we have to repress.
Mm,
Like Prabhupada says, follow the regulative principles of freedom, like those kind of
mm.
things.
Sure, yeah. There's the four regulative principles of
Yeah.
of bhakti.
Mhm.
Um, basically, I guess that's they really cover all of that, right? It's like,
Yeah. Yes. Sinful
intoxication.
tendencies. Yeah.
Yeah,
Intoxication.
it's gambling. It's um, yeah, it's really like, yeah, it kind of covers the gamut there, I guess. Um, and I like you mentioned a little while ago. There's like a verse shortly after this one where Krishna starts talking. He mentions like other people's work, right? So,
Mm,
um, sort of the need to follow your own path
mm,
and not to follow someone else's.
mm,
And um, I think that's a very interesting thing I was hoping to speak about
mm,
as well.
mm,
Um,
mm,
where he says it's like it's better to follow your own nature, follow
mm,
your own path, and just totally fail.
mm,
It's better to do that
mm,
than to try to do someone else's work and
mm,
even to succeed at it,
mm,
right? And he says that to follow someone else's path is actually a very dangerous
mm,
thing.
mm,
Um, I guess I have maybe one or two experiences I can think of in my mind where it's like,
mm.
yeah, there
Please
was
go ahead.
a certain point where I was just like on a particular path, or maybe it just felt like I'm doing something. There's good aspects to it, there's bad aspects to it. A previous job I had, for example, where it was just it did feel I kind of had this feeling like this just isn't really like my work. It
Mm,
just doesn't quite fit with my personality. It just doesn't quite
mm,
fit with what my nature is. It feels like, and I guess it took, once I read this verse in Bhagavad Gita, this is maybe a couple years afterward, but I had that sort of moment of like, wow, yeah, that's
mm,
what that was. It's like I was trying to do someone else's work.
mm,
And so there was just like always this tension
mm,
um between what I was doing and what I felt like I
mm,
should have been doing based off of
mm,
just what my
mm,
nature is.
mm,
um I'm curious, I just was hoping to hear from you about that the last part of that where Krishna says it's dangerous.
mm,
Why would it be a better thing to just totally like completely fail trying
mm,
to following your own nature,
mm,
as opposed to even succeeding following someone else's? And why would it be dangerous to try to do another path,
mm.
you know?
Yeah, it's very dangerous. Okay. So first, a reflection on your story.
Hmm.
Like you mentioned, you had a boss and he's so satisfied doing what he's doing. He finds like strength in doing that.
Yeah,
But for you, it's
very good at it. Yeah, it was like just, I mean, loved doing the work that he did. Definitely.
and for you, it's like you have to you have to be artificial.
Mm,
You have to act in a way. No, no, I can do it, and it's a struggle to strive in that direction. It's like ah, okay. So every individual is unique. If your boss has to sit whole day and write a book, I bet he cannot do it.
mm,
He has to be out in the field and activity, a
mm,
lot of activity. Now, I was thinking of an example of a leader like a Kshatriya, a leader. Like we see one of the story of Maharaj Parikshit. He went and he saw Kali personified. So he like took up the sword and he's like, why are you hurting the bull and a cow? How dare you in my kingdom? You do such a sinful activity. You won't survive anymore. Even if the demigods want, they cannot save you. I'm Maharaj Parikshit, descendant from Arjun and Pandavas and Lord Krishna. and cannot let this happen. And then on another, if suppose somebody who is not in the Kshatriya fighting spirit, like a farmer, if he takes the role of a Kshatriya and he sits on a throne of Maharaj Parikshit, and then when he goes to Kali and like run away from here, he can't he can't be King Parikshit. And imagine if such a person ruled the whole planet. One person can handle the responsibility of ruling the whole planet. And somebody like that, or somebody in ignorance, like a Shudra who is like sinful, he takes up the role of ruling the whole planet. It's very dangerous. And that has happened after Maharaj Parikshit left the body, and so many unscrupulous kings they became who are not like real fighters. And now there is so many sinful activities going on, and everything is approved by government, and it's so much degradation in the society. But because he was there, he could check. But anybody else is like, they are like the last person who goes on the field and for the protection. And they don't follow any brahmanas also who are spiritual minded people. So it's like everything is put to ruination.
Mm,
So in that way, one cannot exchange roles.
mm. Yeah, that's a very nice example, Proji. I know, like, it's so, it's interesting to learn a lot of these things, the about the Vedic civilization,
Mm,
how old it was, how old it is, how advanced, it has
mm,
been.
mm,
And, you read a lot in Srila Prabhupada's books about, kings of the past.
mm,
Um, and, as we're in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, his brother Yudhishthir, is sort of the rightful king and is this wonderful king who's just, his whole life is dedicated to performing his duty, making the best life possible for the citizens, um, trying to make sure that his whole kingdom is a spiritual place, where spiritual values are held in, the highest regard and practiced. And it's just so, yeah, it's sort of, it's almost like unimaginable in our a modern day American setting, to imagine, because, I mean, we're not like too big on monarchy here, you
mm,
know, um, just based off of our history, like the people who came from Europe to America were sort of trying to flee from kings.
mm,
Um, but, I guess those kings who they were fleeing from were, sort of, I mean, they were fleeing for a reason, I suppose, right? There was like
mm,
things that were being imposed on them, or maybe, they wanted to practice religion their way, or they were being suppressed, some other way.
mm,
Um, the kings that are described in Vedic literatures, like Yudhishthir, like Maharaj Parikshit, who you mentioned, who I believe is Yudhishthir's grandson. Is that right?
Yeah, Arjuna's
Or Arjuna's grandson. Okay.
grandson.
Yeah. So, connected to, I guess that's just, a way of connecting two stories. That's Bhagavatam with Maharaj Parikshit.
Mm,
Uh, connecting that to the Bhagavad Gita and all the people who are involved in that. So, Maharaj Parikshit is also described in this way,
mm,
um,
mm,
and it's just very interesting. It's like, I mean, what if you did have a ruler? What if the standard and the expectation of a ruler was that
mm,
your whole life is dedicated to this. This is your duty, and you have to take care of people.
mm,
You have to make sure people are fed. You have to
mm,
make sure that things are going well. You need to
mm,
travel around and see everybody. Like it's just, it feels idealistic now, I guess, to think about it, or to, oh, well,
mm,
maybe what if that could happen again? But,
mm,
it's very nice still to see that as the example of like this is how leadership actually used to be conducted. I mean, this
mm,
is how it really was.
mm,
Um, we wouldn't have such an aversion, I guess, to like a monarch or something
mm,
like that if we just knew they were going to be a good ruler.
mm,
Um, but I guess as you say, like, some people really have that inclination. They want to lead because they want to do it for the benefit of all.
mm,
And that's sort of using that desire to lead in a good way. And then
mm,
there are other people who maybe they want to be in charge, but it's more of just so that they can be in charge,
mm,
so that they can have power. so that they
mm,
can have influence,
mm, mm,
wealth,
mm,
all these different things. And so, yeah, I guess like, when more and more leaders fit into that latter category,
mm,
um, there's a little bit of a degradation that, occurs in the whole society. So it's a perfect example of how dangerous it
mm,
can be, I suppose.
mm.
Yeah, going back to this verse we're talking about.
So I was also thinking, as you rightly mentioned, um, why we want to do somebody else's duty. What is the reason? Now, one thing we understand is dangerous, but why do we want to do somebody else's duty?
Mm,
What do you think?
mm. Well, I guess you could look at the example of leadership,
Mm,
um, people who are in charge of a lot of people, and you
mm,
can see like maybe somebody wants to do work that they're not qualified for because it would give them sort of more material success.
mm,
They'd have more power.
mm.
They could become much
Exactly.
wealthier.
Yes.
Um, but I can think of another example. It's closer to home for me anyway, which is, like you'd want to do someone else's work either because they want you to, and so you want to make
Mm,
that person happy,
mm,
um, or sort of
mm,
something like that, where it's like maybe there's just an expectation, um, or
mm,
you haven't really spoken up, and
mm,
so maybe somebody even thinks that this is going to be the right thing for you to ask you to do work that's not really,
mm, mm,
according to your nature.
mm,
So maybe it's, that could also be another reason, where it's
mm,
maybe not such um, it's not like you're not motivated by power, but more of
mm.
motivated by like the
Pleasing somebody.
desire to please.
Mm.
Sure.
Well, the second reason is fine. I mean, we can try to be what they want us. We won't be successful though. They will realize soon that, yeah, that's not who we are. And they will accept us as we are. But that motive of trying to please somebody and that's why doing it is fine. But the first one is what most people adhere to.
Mm,
Like a Brahmana is like who lives very humbly and poorly in a way. His life is meant towards self-realization. He gives guidance to those who comes to him. And a Kshatriya or the fighter or the leaders, they're like the front face. And they're like everybody looks, wow. And whatever they say, the whole nation, yeah, this is what we are gonna do. And the Brahmana may think, he's living in a palace and he has so much like charisma and such following and such decision making, such a greatness. So I think I want to be in that role. And Brahmana will be miserable if he sits there.
mm,
Because so many issues will come to him. A leader will act one after another. The Brahmana, when he faces all these hundreds of issues in a day, he'll like, let me read my books and give me some time. I'll think about it tomorrow. And he'll be miserable, the state will be miserable. No problems are getting addressed. One or two, they're just not, it's not gonna work.
mm. Yeah, I like also like how you're describing these different roles that that exist in the Vedic civilization in Varnashram Dharma
Mm,
as it's called. And it's set up so well in this way where like Brahmanas advise the Kshatriyas, these scholarly
mm,
people,
mm,
so it's like, the Kshatriyas are those charismatic rulers who
mm,
are sort of, they're instituting, what everyone else is going to do. At the same time, they take direction
mm,
from sort of the learned people, the spiritual people.
mm,
And, this sort of puts those brahmanas kind of at the top in a way of
mm,
this hierarchy
mm,
or of this society. And it's sort of counterbalanced because the
mm,
brahmanas take vows of poverty. They renounce, they give up their possessions. So it's, they can't, it's sort of set up so that they can't take advantage
mm.
of it, like they can't just accumulate wealth,
It's
you
not their
know.
nature also. It's
Yeah,
just they're
they have to
happy just by little begging, and they're like,
yeah,
I
read the
don't need anything
books.
else. It's just they find pleasure somewhere else. A Kshatriya or a leader find pleasure somewhere else. And they
Yeah.
both are well situated. They
Hmm.
all are happy.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
these
I know.
material desires.
Mm. There's a mini theme, I guess, in this chapter that Krishna mentions in several verses, which is envy. You know, like
Mm,
perform your duty without envy, he says at different points. And I guess I'd think of that just because, in a system that's set up well, where everyone is sort of just doing the thing that best fits them, there isn't envy, or I guess, sort of nearly as much,
mm,
in a society where
mm,
we just sort of like are all kind of pushed to go our own way and kind of get everything we can.
mm,
And you know, especially if there's a mentality push that there's only limited amounts of resources, there's only limited amounts
mm,
of like capability for you to succeed. So you
mm,
have to like sort of push someone else down in order to raise yourself up.
mm,
There's a lot of envy of, we want what someone else has. Um,
mm,
very easy and I mean, get on the internet for 5 minutes and you're going to feel envy, um, of somebody for something that they have. Um, and yeah, I'm just struck by that, that aspect of the Vedic system as well, where, everyone is just sort of like doing what they want, what's natural to them. And so they don't want something else. They look at someone else's role, which may be very different from their own, but they can just appreciate like,
mm,
oh wow, this is a great personality. This
mm,
person it's very different from mine, but
mm,
it plays such an essential role in the
mm,
whole society.
mm,
And I'm so glad that that person is there. You just want to help that person. And so
mm,
there isn't that like, oh, I wish I had what they had,
mm,
right? Sort of like the Brahmana knows if I really did have what a Kshatriya had, I
mm,
actually wouldn't like it. I would want to go back.
mm, mm.
Um, yeah.
There is one angle more to it, that mostly envy does not arise between the roads. It arises within the roads. Like a king will think, I have such a small kingdom to rule.
Uh,
He has a 10 times bigger kingdom to rule than me. And he is ruling it so nicely. Everyone is listening. There are so many conflicts in my kingdom, and it's not so big and not financially so well. Then, but he would not envy Brahmana. He would not envy like business class. But on the other hand, Brahmana, he will see other Brahmana and he will think like, so many people are taking guidance from him. Nobody is coming to me for guidance.
mm,
What how wonderfully he speaks. So much knowledge he has gathered, and I don't have those realizations. Or how many mystical powers he has attained, his purity, and I'm still. So there is
mm,
uh,
yeah.
within roles, but whatever success one gets materially is based on one's karma.
Mm. So then connecting that back to like this idea of repression and sort of like
Mm,
when is repression good versus bad, I guess. Um, so like, within our roles, maybe we feel envious of someone, they have a similar nature, they have a similar job, as us. And so if we sort of, we notice that that person has more or they're more gifted or, whatever it may be, the negative side would be to, I guess, to feel that envy, to
mm,
resent them,
yeah,
whatever might be, plot against them or something. But, there's a
yeah.
positive side of it, which would be, use that as inspiration. Or at least that's one thing I can think of anyway. Like, oh, this person they're so good at it. It's like so many people take advice from this person. what can I learn from this person?
That
You
is
know?
without envy, then we will be like inspired by them, we want to follow them, we want to serve them because they're
Mm.
so great. Usually it's difficult.
Yeah, yeah, it's very difficult. It's not, yeah, it's
It's
not
not
so
normal.
easy, but yeah,
So,
yeah.
Prabhu, there is repression of nature, but this envy is not based on one's nature. It's just an unwanted impurity of the heart. It's
Mm,
like an external covering that can be shed off. Nature is like the substance of what we are made up of.
mm,
And these are just like the dirt on that. And that leaving that is not really an act of repression, also, because we're not repressing our nature. It's just an unwanted thing that we just need to, that just needs our heart to become purified.
mm. Okay, so this is a different thing then that we're sort of discussing with
Yeah.
with something
Envy
like
is not
envy.
based on our nature.
Yeah, okay. So this is the like the six anarthas or the unwanted
Mm,
things that
mm,
described.
mm,
Um, really almost kind of the same exact list as the seven deadly sins in Christianity. So yeah, so like greed and
mm,
lust and envy, all these pride, all these things. With this is a separate category from like what our nature is, what sort of the modes of material nature that we carry or that are acting on us. This is just sort of a thing where, it's um it's sort of become maybe a characteristic, or we experience it
mm,
um because we've chosen to follow it at various
mm,
points in the past, so it sort of
mm,
has grown in that way. But
mm,
really the only thing you want to do with that kind of a thing is somehow or other find a way to get rid of it.
mm, mm, mm.
Okay. So yeah.
What
Yeah,
do you
thank you.
think?
Yeah, thank you for that distinction for sure. Yeah.
So, are we good to take a call?
Yeah, no, I think we're good for G.
All right. So we hope you enjoyed our session on repression, nature, karma, what is really repression, what is not repression, why we want to repress, and different aspects we discussed. So thank you for joining on Shyamcast. See you next week. Bye for now.